Okay, so we're taking a little, I don't even want to even call it a break. I was struggling with that because I was like, this isn't Jeremiah. And I know people like to like move through, but if you've been around for any amount of time, you know that things come up in between. And sometimes content is heavy. Jeremiah is heavy. Jeremiah is heavy. So it does something that I think is really important, which is it stirs up your toxic religiosity and it grabs where we're kind of like, oh man, I didn't see that like that. And that's all good, but that sometimes needs time to like process. And so this week, this particular study goes in line with that because we talked about how the key issue in Jeremiah is they have a heart mind condition, right? There's like, they're getting all this information, but nothing is changing, ever learning, but never coming to the knowledge of truth. And I think a lot of times we feel like when we look at biblical stories, there's some of us, I do, like we're so far away from that mindset. Like, oh, that doesn't necessarily apply to me. I'm malleable. I'm flexible. When Yah tells me to do something, I'm on it. I got this. But then sometimes it may not just be you, but it's your environment too that determines how well you're able to process something. So I had a week and I wish it wasn't the week that it was, but it wasn't the week that it could have been if I probably hadn't grown in areas. So I applauded myself this week for growth, but the feelings didn't change. And that bothered me. That part bothered me. The feelings that I feel, the emotions that I feel, the mindset that I want to change is still there, even though my reaction may be different. And then there were situations this week where my reaction was not different, but my recovery was swifter. And so looking at the wins and all of it and normalizing this, Yah has not asked us to be perfect. He's asked us to yield to the process of perfection. And last night, I was like on 10, just socially after a week of just being with kids all week and being at schools. And then I had kids over and I was like, I don't even think I'm going to record. This is not happening. I just can't. And my prayer was this. It's crazy. I'm telling you guys this because it all has a purpose. I was looking at Jeremiah 9, I think we're in. And I said, yeah, if you give me the lesson, I'll teach it. But at this point, I don't have nothing. I ain't got it in me. I'm tapped out. Right? I'm like, if you give it to me, I'll teach it. So I couldn't get my mind to focus in on Jeremiah 9. I couldn't like, you know how like something is there and it feels like it's like you're grasping at pieces. I called it like the Willy Wonka effect. Remember when he puts the person into the particle thing and then like all these tiny particles are there, but they're no longer like a whole anything. That's how my mind felt. That's how my mind felt. And I know that when that happens, one, I'm tired, but two, that's for me an opportunity to know when Yah really, really is placing something into my focal point. Because I told you guys I deal with, I would call it mild to moderate ADHD. And it's something that I didn't realize until probably like maybe 2 years ago, because I'm very high functioning. It's like a gift and a curse. I'm a great multitasker and I can complete several tasks at a time, but I also get easily exhausted and easily irritated. And I used to always pray about it. I'm like, something's wrong with me. Oh, I don't know. I'm just not a kind person. And it wasn't literally through doing what we're going to do today. I realized that some things are not always just spiritual, but they're also biological. And you can pray about some things that are biological too. And that's okay. Like sometimes the very flaw in a person can be what Yah uses as a strength. Gideon, right? Seen as a coward. He wasn't trusting, right? Peter, he's a hothead. Some of these things and these traits that we beat ourselves up over are the very internal humilifying. I just made up a word. The things that act as a humbler of us. They show our humanity because those of us who do and are motivated to do extraordinary things at the hand of Yah have to have those great normalizers, below normalizers on my part, because I never think of anything or myself like that. And so this week, I was in a place where I had to confront, like, I feel like for me, like 5 different major things all at one time. And I felt like a bit of Jeremiah. I felt like a bit of just cognitive dissonance. I felt all of these things. And I said, what changes? Like, my thing was change. And I saw something that sparked this for me. And interesting, it was on social media. Always cultivate your social media to reflect the change you want to see and not the drama that the world wants to give you. Just a small caveat. So I was watching something and a person said, do you feel like, asking a person a question, do you feel like you have to, you're giving up on God if you work on your mental health or if you go to therapy? And I sat and I waited for the response because I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. And they weren't people that any of us know. It was, general post. And the person said quite the opposite. I find that if you have a relationship with the creator and you learn yourself, then it deepens that relationship and makes it more intimate. And it shot me back to something that was said to me, something very, very similar. And a person told me that Yah is heard from within. Something that never left my mind. Yah is heard from within. And immediately when I was told that, it shocked me because I have this thing also that people have a God in their own head too. And you guys know that I'm like borderline obsessed with Lech Lecha, which it means go for you. And it literally is part of a greater context. Yah tells Abraham to leave his father's house, leave his country, leave all these things and go toward what I have for you, like go for you, but it means to go inward first. And how that's interpreted is on a few levels. His father's house is not just a physical place, but it's literally a mindset under which you're raised in. There are things that you're taught implicitly and explicitly being in an environment with other adults. It doesn't necessarily mean that has to be your father or your mother. And so Yah was literally telling him you're going to have to navigate through that, through the things you learned from your country, the area you live in, and then the things that all these authorities that exist in your head. And he's like, but you have to hear my voice. And so literally that's what Abraham was striving for. And for us, because he's considered in a general term, the father of the faithful, there are some practical steps in his moving away from these structures and transforming into the person that Yah wanted him to be. And it's laid out in such a deep narrative. We know his uprising, his downfalling, when he has to recovenant with Yah, when he doesn't understand Yah, when he parents in one way, when he doesn't. It's all laid out to show that it's a process. It's a process. And so I've noticed that when it comes to emotional and mental recovery, and in this case, we're talking about like Jeremiah and the people, and they're going through these processes, all the other voices in people's head tend to be the primary, and it's not Yah. Because to go back to something means that there's something internally that's prompting you to move into a different direction. And so what I want to focus on today, we're going to look at Romans 12, and I'm going to read you the verse, and we're going to go back to Romans 12:1, and we're going to look at these words here. And as we look at words and how they come up, I'm going to give you definitions. We're going to look at the definitions. I'm going to give you some videos. And this is more of me facilitating your own thought process than me really telling you a bunch of anything. Because what the people and what us as a people, what we tend to reject is the process. We want the answer, but we hate the process. I know I do. I want a person just tell me what the right answer is. So when I work through it, I get it right at the end. But sometimes you have to work through it and there is trial and error. And that particular way of thinking is not really acceptable amongst religious spaces, because error means sin to people. And error is really an opportunity for correction if the person is not erring on purpose. And for a lot of us, we err on the side of something because we have some genetic things and some genetic predispositions. And if you think I'm kidding, by the end of this, you won't. But even Yah calls out the epigenetic or the transgenerational mindset and biological function of Israel every time he says, you act like your fathers in the wilderness. When he says your fathers in the wilderness and they're 2,000 years on the other side of the wilderness, that should send an alarm. He's like, you're still acting and behaving in the way of people that really you haven't even ever come in contact with. You guys were never even in the wilderness. So the behavior then is what? Is passed down. And sometimes we reject that because we think it's holy to reject practical. But really, the holiest things are found in the practical always. Always. If you don't think there was holiness in the practicality of collecting manna, then you missed the whole picture. It was a practical application that led to a more holy understanding of their sustainer, right? 6 days you gather. On the seventh day, there won't be any. So gather double on the sixth day. It's a practice of simple, eventually you go into autopilot. After doing that for a couple of weeks, they would be like, all right, we out here gathering. 6th day we gather double. You're going to learn how much you need. You're not going to gather. You'll know how to fine tune the practice, because we know what happened, right? Well, someday at the beginning, they gathered too much and worms came. Remember that? Which means that they didn't really understand it fully, how that process worked. They tried to hold on to a little bit. They had food insecurity. They didn't trust it. Those are all mental and biological practices that are worked out in a practical way by the Creator so that he can deepen our spirituality. It just is that way. What tends to happen when people don't really like to read the Old Testament, but most of the practical principles of Scripture are found in the Old Testament. It was living people walking out things. Like, you have life stories. You don't have many just like full life stories in the New Testament outside of like Yehoshua. You got a little bit of John, got a little bit of Acts, you got some things, but mostly in the Brit Kadashah, you have letters. You have letters pretty much using Torah to give people information on how to live their lives. In the Old Testament, or in Torah and Tanakh, what you have is you literally have individual people who have highs and lows, hilltops and valleys, questions, lack of understanding, broken families. Why? Because that's why they are called your patriarchs and your matriarchs. You look at them, and what you're supposed to be able to do is identify the parts of yourself, not just the good things. Everybody wants to be a David, but nobody wants to be a Saul. But David and Saul were literally one and the same as far as the zeal and the ability, but one was yielded to Yah and one wasn't. Very much of like two sides of the same coin of a personality. Why do you think Yah let him be raised up with Saul and in his house? But then you saw a person that wasn't yielded to Yah. He didn't pray and seek Yah. The difference, if you really look through it, the difference between David and Saul was that when David made a mistake, he owned it. When Saul made a mistake, he made excuses. When David was getting ready to do something, he inquired of Yah. And it's literally in there that many times. When Saul did things, it came from his own imagination. But we know for sure that Saul was good. We know he was, because Yah said he was. He was goodlier than all of them. And it wasn't talking about looks. He was good. It was Tov. And he was tall. So you had that, right? So you have these physical things. And it's so interesting because we leave a wealth of Scripture behind when we don't look at the people, or we only look at their triumphs, Or when we look at their issues, we separate them from ourselves and we don't see them as a part of a necessary development. Literally each part of a person's life shows you the process that we all go through. And it shows us how we're supposed to, what end we will arrive at based upon our decisions and our processes. So you can't ever wonder like, well, if I do this, will I? Well, there's some stories. If I reject Yah, and if I don't listen to Yah, and I suppress and I suppress and I suppress, you know what's going to happen? You'd be like Saul, you're going to go crazy. What happens now, we don't call it go crazy, but people end up with extreme anxiety, depression, psychosis, right? And I'm not even talking about like those drug induced, I'm talking about literally from fractured experiences and a mind that doesn't have a proper stream of consciousness because we constantly interrupt the process because we don't want to feel and we don't want to go through. You have people who end up in late life with what? Alzheimer's and dementia. Those are both directly connected to suppression. People who have low, what they call like low emotional connection and experience. I read an article this morning as I was going through this, and there is a 8% increase, 8% of the population, who has dementia also suffer from hearing loss, which means that if one of your sensory impressions are affected, then it affects how your brain health works. It affects your ability to connect, and that part of your brain weakens. So if we don't go through tough emotional processes with taste, touch, feel, all the 5 senses, all those modalities that Yah gave us to experience, if we mute any of those, we put ourselves at higher risk to have a deteriorated brain, which is huge because we're getting that right now. The brain, the mind, the computer, the house that drives the interaction with our environment is a very, very, very fragile and very, very, very delicate vessel. And that's why Yah is constantly telling us, you have to yield that to me, and you also have to yield your experiences to me, because you don't know how the magnitude of your experiences are going to affect your mental capability and your literal ability, check this, to hear, modify, and change your behavior. It's huge. So when we look at Israel, when we look at Judah and their inability to change, is because they got into so many practices with those 5 senses that were so far away from Yah that their brain, literally, their lev, their authority within, that they now were captive to it. And that's what Yah was like, you are now literally in a battle to recover mental space because you've given it to things that are literally eating at your brain. And so Yah with Torah is giving us literal experiences. That's why it has to be practical. It cannot be abusive. It cannot be oppressive. It has to be practical and has to be loving, like it's applied to children, because we don't learn when we're abused. Everybody knows that. You don't learn when you're abused. You can seek to not be abused so you can modify behavior, but you don't learn. You don't learn. Okay. All right. That was an intense introduction. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to get so intense. All right. Romans 12. You will never look at Romans 12 verses 1 and however much further we make it ever again. Romans 12, we're going to deal with this idea of, we're going to start with this. What is the work? We hear that thrown around a lot, right? And it's something that whenever things become esoteric seeming, or whenever they become a part of a bigger community, or whenever somebody whose color we don't like, so silly, uses them, we reject truth. We have to stop doing that. Truth, all truth in this dome, in this universe, in this world comes from Yah. All of it. He is truth. People can take truth and take bits and pieces of truth. We all probably at this stage in our life and our development, we know that to be true. That even the devil disguises himself as an angel of light. So if you didn't believe that my previous statement was true, I know you know that one's true, so it can apply retroactively. You can backdate it to that. It is true that people who don't have good intentions or who are not intending to direct you to Yah can use truth, because the only thing that can yield anything is truth. You have to have some form of truth in it for it to work. It's just how it is. So in order to make artificial grass, you have to mimic real grass, right? Like, it doesn't have to have the same compound, but you want it to look like something that really exists. In order to make foods that are fake foods, you have to use natural flavoring that simulates the real thing. It don't taste good if they would have just left it without that little last thing of like natural flavoring, some kind of chemical that tells you not to taste all the gross stuff that's actually in that. Without that, you would then know that it was fake. So you got to apply a little truth to it. So when it comes to this idea of people say, like, you have to do the work, some people see that, hear that, and immediately go, oh, I don't like that. The psychologist says that. The therapist says that. These people say that. So I'm going to show you in the text where Yah says you have to do the work. You have to do the work. You're not going to just pray yourself out of it. It is an active participant process. This work is, Yah is like, literally, this is something, I'm going to do something. And then you're going to respond to that. I'm going to do something. You're going to respond to that. That's in the positive, but guess what? It's still a work if you do it the other way. You do something and then Yah chastises you for that. And then you do something. You're still an active participant in your growth and development. Romans 12:1 says, I beseech you, therefore, and Maury says this all the time, so I'm gonna give it to you. This is your cue to go back and read 11-1. You got to know what the wherefore or the therefore is there for, right? We'll get into the rest, but he's talking to a community and he's talking about a bunch of different things. So we're gonna get to this particular part, but whenever you see a therefore, please believe he said something before that. Okay, so you go back. So your job today, if you take up the challenge, is to read Romans 1-11. All right. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present your bodies. That one is the translation for that is basar, your flesh. It literally say flesh, and it would make a really good connection for us because we know Galatians and Romans and that war between the flesh and the spirit, and we immediately link on to that. Bad translation for congruity of thought, but I'm putting it back in. All right, present your flesh a living sacrifice. Holy, set apart, and we'll get to this word acceptable in a second, and acceptable unto Elohim, check this out, which is your reasonable service. So the work, the idea of like a living sacrifice, literally is the idea of work. You need to present your work in the flesh as a sacrifice, and that is your reasonable service. That's your reasonable service. I'm going to say about that one. So then our job then is to be healed, right? Because we're going to get to that, if you have your flesh, right? And then not only to be healed, but to be self-healers. It doesn't mean you do it by yourself, but you need to know and identify the need for the healing. We're going to get into, and we'll see some words, we're getting into this process of metamorphosis. And I reached out to a sister because I was like, you're going to like this. But the internal part of the creature that says, I need to change, has been put in it already. So when we don't do our reasonable service, we're rejecting and really stopping something that is naturally in us. Scripture teaches also that eternity, that which is beyond, that thing that makes man have potential, unlike other things. You know, a cow will only and always be a cow. A cow will eat grass and defecate out grass, and it will breed, and it will have babies, and it will make milk for those babies. And that is what a cow does based upon its function. So those kind of creatures are called behema. Literally, in it is what it is. It is programmed to be what it is. But man, being created in the likeness and image of Elohim, has potential, great potential infinite and limitless potential. That's why each of us are uniquely made. We have community structures, but we're uniquely made, and we have the potential at every day to become a better version of who we are, because our standard is Elohim, which we'll never reach. So we don't have a cap on what we can achieve. We don't have a cap on how much we can heal, how much we can think, how much we can create. And part of that not yielding to Yah is why we have an infinite amount of wickedness in the world. Because as a creator who is dysfunctional, mankind, then we can also think of evil. We have the potential to think of great evil because we don't have a limit. We created in the likeness and image of Elohim. We have potential. All right, so because you are human, then you have to know how to present your flesh, your humanity, as a living sacrifice that's set apart and that's acceptable, we'll get to that, unto Elohim, and that is your reasonable service for just having life. So the second part of this, it says, and we'll go through each word, and, I like that they put and at the beginning of a sentence, and be not conformed, you guys have heard this probably a million times, to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, and here's the why, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. So because I told you I teach writing, I'm always looking for how certain things are structured. So it's interesting because then you can say, if my mind is transformed and renewed, then I will know how to prove what is good. I will know what is acceptable to Yah, and I will know what the perfect will of Yah is. That is a question that normally all of us have. And then we search for how to do it. But the first step to knowing what is good, to be able to prove, not just know, to prove what is good and acceptable, and not just the will of Yah, but the perfect will of Yah literally begins with the renewing of our mind. So can you reject knowing how the mind works at this point? Well, absolutely not. You can't. Yah was like, literally, you even understanding me is all tied into that experience up here and here, your authority within you, your emotion, what's driving you. All right. So the questions we'll answer is, like, what is the purpose of all of this? Well, the purpose of it is to test and know what is Yah's will. That is like our biggest thing. We need to know when we do something, if it's Yah's will. And then if it's not, then we submit ourselves for judgment and correction, and we get back on track. The other thing is we're going to look at the stigmas of knowing how you function and knowing your emotions, because some people feel like when you seek and you see, if you just start digging, you're going to dig into some stuff you don't want to see. And it's like, but I need to. Because even if I don't dig into it, it's still affecting me. Very little of your conscious experience is driven by what you see. We are constantly making automatic choices around us. And you don't tell yourself when something comes towards your eye to blink. By the time you would have thought of it, you've been hitting the eyeball. Your eyelashes and your eyes did that based upon an automatic response. But have you ever seen, and mainly in animals, not so much in humans, but I've seen humans do it too. Have you ever seen a person that's been severely abused where they don't even flinch when it's time to get hit? Because they're just so used to taking it, where they'll just let a person punch them in the face. You see how you can damage natural automatic responses based upon environmental functions? Yah knows that. But if you don't realize that that part of you is damaged, then you don't know how to ask for help, or a person doesn't know how to ask for help. We have been, going back to where we ended last week, we have been spiritually, emotionally, and religiously abused, whether we knew it or not. And I'm not getting on some like thing of like, oh, your parents are bad. And it's not my point. I'm not saying your parents, that's not my point. The reality is the abuse is that it damaged natural functioning and how we think and behave. And when we're triggered or we behave a certain way, we feel bad, right? But then we also know, I'm like, why couldn't I stop it before I got there? Where were all those things that welled up and pushed me to that place? And then we constantly stay in this space of like, y'all help me, y'all help me, y'all help me. And y'all was like, okay, well, at least for me, it's not just the not wanting to, but you have to understand why you do that. And that understanding why you do something is painful, because then you have to go back and look at and relive. And then that pain normally turns into anger. And most people don't get past the pain and the anger. So then you stay locked into that. So for most people, they're just like, I just want to forget it. And Yah was like, I don't want you just to forget it. I want to renew it. I want to literally do a renewal process. We'll get to that. So the purpose of transforming. So your mind aids in a bunch of things. Your mind aids in the choice of your friends, navigating through tough relationships with family. This is like in the communal sense. And it determines also the fellowships we choose. That's why when the young lady said, she was like, well, what about? And I'm like, everything about how you're wired determines what you think is okay and what's not okay. Because the hardest thing for us to admit is that the things that we allow to happen to us is because even though we probably had a little inkling that they weren't okay, because most of the time people that we cared about did them to us, whether it was say mean things to us, body shame us, whatever it was, we then normalize it, or we could take it when other people did. And we didn't see that as a reason for not giving our love, time, and respect to people. So then we step into spaces where people do these same things, and we don't see those things as red flags. We don't see that as a reason to say, I'm not going here. I'm not doing this. We don't know how to immediately step away, because we've been taught to, well, not all of that is bad, because this person also did this, and me. I had a young lady, well, actually she's older than me, but she's young, tell me that. She's like, you're used to it. That's the problem. And Yah didn't call us to be used to things. We're supposed to be aware of all things. Then we become, or you're hyper vigilant. He didn't say be hyper vigilant. He said be mindful and be vigilant and pay attention, right? Those require a regulated system to be able to be mindful, to sit in an uncomfortable moment and wait and react, to be vigilant. Now to react properly and in accordance with what happened, not overdo it, not underdo it, right? And then to pay attention, because both those two alarms may go off and you may be ready and be with the you know what. And then if you pay attention, you might find out that somebody else is coming to handle it. All of those are necessary, but only are able to happen in a fully regulated system. So check this out. Most people, and obviously you have people who obviously get PTSD because war is rough. It is rough. But a good soldier operates in precision always. They are very, very mindful. They know who their men are and who other people, who the op is, right? So I'm not a soldier. So I went to to go play. I'm gonna take this down for a second. I went to go play paintball, and not a soldier, and obviously would have some trouble in any other circumstance. Anyways, I'm out playing paintball, and we're playing, and you have teams. Well, my adrenaline's up, and if you've ever played paintball, it's high, like you're operating in your like automatic responses. And so people are coming and they're ducking and they're hiding. Well, a person on my team slid into my hiding spot and I lit them up at close range. I did. They were so mad at me, so mad. And they were like the best person on the team. I clearly wasn't. And I say all that to say, automatic responses without training can have you shoot at your own team. And a lot of times we're in positions where we're lighting up our own team because they may look like, and they may even perform like the op, but they're not the op. They're not. And so the idea of transforming our minds is very, very important and necessary so that we know who are safe people and who are not. Okay. Another thing that we're going to look at is that you are more prone to replicate what you don't heal even in Torah. For instance, if you keep doing something the same way and it turns into an automatic response, whatever it is, like we brush our teeth every day. If you brush your teeth the same way every day, it seems like a chore when somebody says, you know, actually, you've been missing this spot over here. So guess what you have to do? You have to get all extra mindful. You got to like, I had my dentist a few years ago was like, when you go for the far back teeth, instead of keeping your mouth open, actually close your mouth and it releases the jaw and it lets you get all the way back. You know how awkward that was at first? Every time I brushed my teeth, I had to be like close my mouth down so I could reach. It was just like the most awkward experience. Change is awkward as heck. It's awkward, but if you don't change it, then you'll practice wrong. People think that when they come into Torah, just because they read something or because somebody showed them something, that automatically they're going to experience change. And a lot of people are covert frustrated and low-key really mad out there, but don't want to say anything because now they're like, this is supposed to be the big fix and it's not working for me. And I'm like, it's not that Torah is not working. It's that the way you're learning it and the way it's being taught to you is not in any way consistent with our ancient practice of hands-on and practical learning. We're literally going and doing like westernized school systems, and we only sit inside of buildings. You know, do you see what happens to kids? Kids who from 0 to, let's say, when they enter into structured school, they learn so much because they experience their environment hands-on. They're corrected. They easily adapt and change. And guess what else they are? They're self-taught. They're self-taught. Once they get into school, they said that cognitive activity diminishes like exponentially. You sit them in a chair, they face one direction, they have structured time. Don't touch this, don't get out of your seat, don't talk to your neighbor, don't make noise, don't tap your pencil, don't do this. You have this much time to play and this much time to do this. And eventually they turn into us. And then we take that same structure and then we add it into what we call like church, right? So in most churches, you go to a building and you sit in a pew and then this person talks at you. And your only response is affirmative to what they say, and there's no time to question. And sometimes our churches are so big that you don't even have the opportunity to question. You don't get to get in the mindset of how the person thinks. And what you don't realize is when you were a child, even if you had not so great parents, you were in their head. Children are hyper in tune to what's going on. They know when you're sad. You sad? What's wrong? You want to play? You don't want to play with me? They're very much engaging and they're getting those cues. So to go and to try to learn opposite of being able to engage is going to yield very, very little growth. And I know it's not of Yah because Yah is a Yah that journeys with. When he sought to teach the Israelites in the wilderness, he didn't just send Moses. No, he went with them. Pillar of cloud, pillar of fire, 40 years. Giving a physical demonstration from a physical man who everybody knew talked and heard face to face with Yah, so much so that he reprimanded and didn't let the man go into the promised land because he misrepresented his heart for the people. That is the kind of Yah we have. And then he does the same exact thing where he's like, not only am I do that, but then the King of Glory comes and he doesn't go sit in the temple all day. He walks, he talks, he eats, he gives demonstrations, he tells stories, he plays with children, he pipes, he dances, he goes to weddings, he meets harlots, he goes to wells, literal, practical information. Why? It changed the lives, not only of the people that experienced him, but everybody, because that was not how the religious people engaged with the community. It's big, big, big. So if we don't change how we're doing something, then guess what we're going to get? The same results. You want to figure out how to get the same results? Keep doing the same thing. You'll get the same results. So the reason why it's necessary to heal And the reason why it's necessary, not just to regular heal, but literally to renew, be transformed by the renewing of our mind, is because the adversary plays on mental weakness. Where there is a hole, that's the adversary's playing ground. That's how he knows. He's like, if I can control the mind, I can control the whole body. If you are going to war, or just use this one, or even to play chess, when a person plays chess, the game changes with every opponent on the table. There's rules, but then you wait for a person to mess up on the fundamental rules of the game. When you move wrong, guess what? Then that's when the opponent becomes the aggressor and attacks and takes your piece. The adversary is the same way. We have to move by law, right? You do certain things, but he knows how things work. So he knows how the mind works. He knows how the authority within works. He knows how trauma works. So he doesn't have to know you, because all the biological responses for every human are the same. But if you have a flaw in the natural biological responses, and the adversary then uses those things to then target you and then keep you in a loop. So you play weak, you play with a wound. It is the movement that is exploited. So if we don't confront our weakness, ask God to judge and strengthen us, then we hinder not only ourselves, but other people. And we end up walking in circles, doing automatic responses in the wilderness, having Yah before us and never changing. They had Yah literally in the midst of the camp for 40 years. And they still, Yah didn't see at any point in that 40-year process, say, you know what? They've actually changed and grown. Let's let them in. But then guess what? The byproduct, the transgenerational passing down, that epigenetic process of their ancestors and our ancestors, we're still in them, because guess who went in? Big kids. By Judges, they had already forgot. If you just didn't. Joshua was already talking about it. He's like, y'all don't want to go as for me and my house. They forgot everything that happened. So then why is this process of renewing our mind so important? So we're going to walk through these words, and literally those who are taking out time, and I feel like that's us, to genuinely understand themselves. See, people don't think that understanding yourself is a part of the process. That's not a part of Torah. Yeah, it is. Literally, people have prayed and said, yeah, or asked. People in New Testament, you have other people. David literally bears it. He's like, I need you to help me. Try the reins of my mind. Try the reins of my heart. Why? That's a personal understanding. He could still do the function that Yah gave him, but he knew to be able to do the function well and to replicate well, he had to do it the way Yah needed it done. Remember the person that said, it's not my belief that's the problem, I'm paraphrasing. But, oh yeah, help my unbelief. That's a personal understanding. You have to come to a place where you don't think you know Yah that well, and where you don't know it all. And your fellowship ain't the only place that's popping to say, you know what, there's some things I don't know. Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're taught to reject and only know, like there's one group that says they are the house of the truth. This is where all the truth is. And I'm like, that can't be. Yah is the only place where all truth is. See, people like, that would have been, if we had a renewed mind, an automatic red flag for people. That would have been an automatic red flag. Like, how? Just this group? Didn't we all ask those questions though at some point? Seems very childish. How do we know we have it right and everybody else doesn't? And he was like, you don't know that. You got Jesus. That's how you got it right. You'd be like, okay, they don't have him. They don't believe in, and you pick all these little individual doctrines, but really we all still kept that same questioning, like, well, what if they're right and I'm wrong? That's why this process is so important, because we need to be transformed by the renewing of our mind so we can prove what is good, acceptable, and perfect will of Yah. Okay, let's go to, we're going to go to the first thing. We're going to talk about the mind and how healing is a self-experiment. But I want to point out this, there's a book, and the person in the book talks about spiritual bypassing. And this is what we're not going to do. That's why we're taking it a little slow. Spiritual bypassing he says, is using spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business in order to shore up a shaky sense of self or to belittle basic needs, feelings, and developmental tasks. I'll make that simple. People hide behind religion. They hide behind it. The holier I talk and the more I learn and the more I read, that I don't have to deal with these small things of like, you know, how I'm treating people. You have some people, and I'm not just even talking about like personal, but you have like some practices, religious practices, people like, I deny myself. It's like, but you're a human. You're supposed to want love and you're supposed to want to eat but you need to know how to do those things properly. And it shows you how Torah is really the only truth that exists, because it doesn't tell you to deny yourself really anything, just tells you how you're supposed to engage with everything. There's very few things that you have to deny yourself of, but religion twists it. So people say, you have to deny yourself sex. That's a lie. You have to have sex within the proper parameters. You have to deny yourself drink. No, you can't become a drunkard. You have to deny yourself and you have to constantly be fasting. No, I'm saying you don't sometimes fast, but you are prohibited from fasting in certain settings like feasts. They are called that for a reason. So you cannot be this person in those spaces. Yah teaches balance. Religion teaches literally how to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business, a shaky sense of self. Why? It's not about you. No, but you very much need to know you so you don't be doing yous on people. You need to know those things. Yah calls people to know themselves. That was an Abraham journey. Abraham had to know, like, I will literally give my wife away when I'm scared. He had to know that about himself. He had to know that there was a trust issue there. How would the trust issue have never been identified if he just started believing it was okay that he did that? Because a lot of people have moved into that area where they're just like, oh, that's okay. I did that because of this. Or I just got a hyper sex drive. That's why I just need to sleep with everybody. That's what you deduced as the functional reality. And so because of that, I'm in Torah, because Torah tells me I could do. But what about self-control? What about all the other things that are taught? It's not always just a remedy so you can be away. You don't pick a person and then model after that. Oh, see, I'm from Judah and Judah got hoes. Remember, he went out and got Tamar and he gave her you will try to turn something, right, into a remedy or a solution instead of dealing with that shaky sense of self. That comes from a shaky sense of self. It just really does. And then we belittle our basic needs and we belittle other people's basic needs. The person says, I don't feel respected. Hey, that's small compared to everything else that's going on here in the world. Like, wow, that's really important to me though. And then this one, developmental task, because selfishness causes us to practice and do things in ways that affect the development of the next generation. What does it look like to the children when they see what the adults are doing right now? See, nobody thinks about that. Nobody thinks about the seed. What does a little girl think? What does a little boy think? What does he feel about Yah? Because he loves his mom. And he, in his just regular old mind, is like, I don't like it. That ain't okay. So he rejects Yah because you told him that that's what Yah said. You see how these things have snowball effects? And if we don't renew our mind and we're not transformed, then literally we can't prove that as functional. There's circumstantial, right? But it's not proven. Can't prove it. And you can't say this is Yah's perfect will. I get in so many conversations with people about certain things in the scripture. And it ain't about that. And I'm like, But I realize why people hate the Brit Kadashah, because it has certain things like this. You need to know the perfect will of Yah. They're like, it was permissible. I said, what's the perfect will? It's difference. There's a difference. It was permissible. Yah allowed, but was it his perfect will? Yeah, I allow my kids to go to bed sometimes without taking a bath, but that's not what I want. I don't want them to have bed bugs and scabies and a bunch of other stuff. So my perfect will for them is for them to bathe, but sometimes they get home and it's late and they're tired. and they cry and they whine, and I don't, so I let them go to bed. But that's not what they do every night. They don't get to pigpen. Perfect will, permissive will. Were you going to kill the patriarch and wipe out everybody because something didn't fit into the perfect will? We'll learn what perfect will is too. Just a second. All right, so let's get to it. Let's look at these words. Let's look at these words, and that's what we're all excited about. So the first one is be transformed. Transformed. It's like a transformer, right? So the process of transforming comes from, and you guys can see me. So if you have logos, this is how this works. The program, this particular pack is like built up, and it has the ability to look up words. I'm going to tell you this before we get started. Some of these words I had to do a little extra work with. I'll show you some of it to get back to the Hebrew, the original Hebrew meaning. But I tell people all the time, culture, context. If you read Torah, you will know if something you read that's even in the Greek is wrong or not consistent, because it will go against Torah. You will also know if a person who speaks a different language is saying something consistent with Torah, if the practice is consistent. So some of these words, like this one here, we'll go Bible word study, and the root word is metamorpho, right? So it means to be changed. In English, we use those words, right? We use Greek words or Latin words, and they have their roots. So we know what being changed means. We know that it's like a process or it goes through something, but this particular word does not have the surface a straight away Hebrew equivalent. So sometimes it's the process that helps you find the equivalent. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It's a process that helps you find the equivalent. So that's the first word. And then, so let's go and look at, let's see, let me do that. Okay, so we have the word metamorpho, got it from there. It means to change, to transfigure, or to transform. To hear the word, literally, you should already have in your mind things in scripture where you've seen change, a transfiguration, or transformation. Another thing that is very, very interesting about this word metamorpho is a lot of times a English equivalent is not added because a lot of people don't see the human process of change as metamorphosis. Actually, science completely rejects human metamorphosis because it said it's something that's only related to animals, because metamorphosis requires a complete transformation of something, where the writer and scripture talks about transformation because we're told that when you become one with Yah, you become a new creature or a new something that doesn't exist in this world. The idea of to change from one thing to another is foreign to the natural mind. But Hebraically, it's not foreign at all. It's not foreign at all. And it deals with the idea of literally, we see it like to be transformed, literally to move from one state to another. The word, and I'm trying to find it, it literally means to flow, like water flows, or like something that moves forward. It's supposed to go through a transference or through a complete process, All right, so let's go. And we're first going to watch, I have 2 videos. The first one is on the mind. So I gave you all this stuff. This will make it make sense. Why your mind and how you experience your environment is necessary for knowing, this one is necessary for knowing how your, how to go through the changing process. So I'll give you these key little things at the bottom of the video is 1 minute and 4 seconds. So genetically determined circuits are the foundation of the nervous system. So when you do something, it's genetically determined. So we talked before. Yeah, I was like, you act like those people from way back then. Yes, your genetics, your makeup, who you come from determines literally the foundation of the circuits of your nervous system. So that's why you respond to things in similar ways, like people like you, like your family. So neuronal circuits are formed by genetic programs being embryonic during embryonic development. So that's when you're very, very tiny. And check this, modified through interactions with internal and external environment. So it starts literally from genetics, but then in the womb, and then what you tell yourself and what you do and experience in your own mind and what other people do in the environment around you. We'll look at neural circuits. It all makes sense. So I'm just reading it. Sensory circuits. Those are the sight, touch, taste, hearing. If you've taken a Hebrew class, you already know everything about the Hebraic experience is based upon that. So you absolutely should be knowledgeable about sensory circuits. And it brings, sensory circuits bring information to the nervous system, whereas motor circuits, motor, right? Sensory senses, motor movement, sends information to muscles and glands. That's why those things that you can experience by sight, touch, taste, smell can affect your literal internal experience. The simplest circuit is a reflex. You know, they test your reflexes. That's not the only reflex you have, right? You know that you have automatic responses in which sensory stimulus directly triggers an immediate motor response. Yeah, some people, if somebody reaches to hit you, you block their hand, or some of us, depending on if we're with the, you know what, somebody slaps you, you automatically slap them back. Somebody like me might be like, I can't believe it slapped me. Some of us but automatically respond depending on how your reflexes work. D, complex responses occur when the brain integrates, check this, information from many brain circuits to generate a response. So it's gathering information from a bunch of different areas to generate a response. A lot of times that's for those of us who are more peacemakers, we might say, can we talk about why you're so upset? We're going to process this experience and maybe we'll walk away and this will not turn into, right? We're probably going to use some complex responses to enable it, you know, to generate a response. And then here, simple and complex interactions among neurons take place on time scales, peep this, ranging from milliseconds to months. Changes and interactions don't just happen automatically. Depending on the neurons, some things take longer. So some things are milliseconds, some things are months. That's a really good thing to know, that it's not you, it's just biological. Certain things just take a little more time, but you know what Yah's allowed us to do. If we know what these things are, we can say, Yah, how long is this going to take? And Yah's like, how about y'all read? Depending on what it is. When we get to this thing on renewal has a time frame attached to it, and it's actually a part of our environment. Mind blown. Yeah, I was like, if you just, I said, everything testifies, everything speaks, some things and times and processes are attached to things. So if you knew I had to do this for 2 weeks and then I would get over the hump, you would just do it for 2 weeks. And sometimes that's why it's important to have coaches and therapists, because those people are trained practitioners in time scales. They know how long it takes you to get to a particular point. And then they'll tell you when they're concerned because you've been doing this, as you said you were, and you haven't reached that hurdle. So that's when they say, maybe you should do this. Now, maybe we should try something a little more aggressive. Why? Because the normal time scale is not applying in the situation, which may mean that what you thought was surface may be a lot deeper. And that is okay too, because there's a time scale for that. The last one, the brain is organized to recognize sensations, but you know, the brain doesn't feel, which is kind of crazy, like in the sense that we understand it. It lights up. It's like this crazy computer, right? The brain is organized to recognize sensations, initiate behaviors, all this from something that we'd be like, oh, I want to learn about this thing. Initiate behaviors, and it stores and accesses memories that can last a lifetime. So when you sit down at your computer, perfect example, and it has like RAM, this access, this memory, right? You don't think about all the things the computer's processing in the background while you're doing a front ground task, right? So when you're doing a front ground task, like searching on YouTube and watching a video, but you have other tabs opening, the computer is still talking to all that information while you're working. That is where AI comes in. So you guys talk about like, don't track me, app tracking. It's because your computer is still talking, even if you're doing one task. Same way that your brain is still having all of this activity while you're still doing one task. That's very, very important, because when people say, I don't have to deal with that, or that's in the past, it's not. The brain doesn't know time like that. That's why things, when you're triggered, automatically become present. Why did I react to something 30 years ago today? Because it was running in the background and it was like, oh, that was from this. And it automatically connected it because there's a circuit going to that thing. The idea of renewing is to transform the circuit process so that when something happens, it doesn't have a place to arrive at and cause a reaction if that's what we don't want. Okay, here's the video. Let me restart it. Can you guys hear it? Thumbs up.
You're no robot, but your brain is filled with circuits too. Those circuits aren't made of wires. They're networks of neurons that relay messages around your brain and body, and they're responsible for everything you think, do, and say. Your sensory circuits carry signals from sense receptors to your brain. Motor circuits send commands to your muscles. Even your quick reflexes use simple circuits. Other, more complex circuits are responsible for memory, decision-making, and your perception of the world around you. These networks can be incredibly complicated, but where do they come from? Before you're born, your genes build simple circuits in your developing brain. As your neurons and their connections change from new experiences and environments, those simple circuits become much more complex. These changes happen mostly in childhood, but continue over your whole life, all a part of building a better brain. Even R2-D2 can't do that.
All right. Literally complex, but very simple when you get it. When we talked about the law of the tongue, how y'all can explain something to us a lot, very complex, or you just keep it simple like he does in Torah and get us to understand it. This idea that the brain literally is a whole experience, and we all have one, and they're all wired differently, should one cause us to be very, very gentle with ourselves and very, very gentle with others. We were talking the other day in a class of mine, and we were talking about eating an apple. And most people don't think about this, but if I ate an apple and you ate an apple, that experience is completely different. Even if we ate the same apple at the same time, in the same room, at the same pace, we were 100% sure that they had the same exact taste. You would taste something different from me. And with that being true, it should change how we engage with people. And one of the prayers that I have always, and we're going to go into this healing of the self-experiment, is that we begin to see each other like Yah sees us. And that's why people shouldn't be so quick to get into relationships, whether they're friendship, community, whatever, because a relationship requires me to have to give extensive investment to knowing your life and your experience at the pace that's normal and in a way that's comfortable for both of us. But that is people in community stay in community outside of like our Western world forever. Villages, they know people forever. They know tendencies, and people are okay with that because they're not in an environment where they feel like they have to hide or they can't heal. They know pain, they know emotion. And that's why a lot of what we call primitive communities have a lot of practices, what they call ritual, to deal with all of those things, because you can't get rid of it. You can't suppress it, because if you have people in community suppressing those things, it makes community hell. You see a lot less, I'm talking about non-Western communal spaces, you see a lot less of that in ancient and primitive cultures, because for everything that a person experiences, there's a process to help them get through, not just to heal something physical, but to heal their mind. It's very important that we know that those The things that people do, we can say, okay, that's not Torah, but the practices and processes, we need to find where ours are in Torah. We have to know where they are. What do you do when a person loses a child? You can't just tell a person to pray for it. There has to be a practice. We have actually, and it's funny, one of the practices that is the most uncomfortable that we see in scripture, I think for people who have lost a child, is in the culture, most of the time, once the woman was restored, then it was time to try to have another baby, which is often in our culture, the hardest thing for people to do. Once that happens, you don't want to have any more kids because it creates this thing of loss in their brain. And I don't want to lose again, but there have to be repairs, because if those natural repairs are not a part of the culture and not a practice, then guess what? Humanity dies. If every time somebody experienced loss, when we just stopped, then the forward progression of the culture, the community collapses. And so they understood the importance of the individual also in connection with the whole. And a lot of times we try to get into spaces and make everybody like one person and erase the individuality. And I do not believe that's what Yah intended. So going into this, healing is a self-experiment. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. We have clear rules, very clear rules on how healing works. There's stories and everything, but how it's applied is circumstantial, right? How it's definitely circumstantial. Healing is literally the purpose of the law. It literally is. If you go back in the basis of Torah, right? Even if written Torah, but the basis of having a law is to keep things whole, right? And when they get outside of wholeness, is to bring them back. Give you some examples. You live in a community and an ox gores another ox. What do? You replace it. Why? It's for the communal health. It's for the communal health. If a man just thinks, see, that's psychological, another psychological thing, his wife is cheating on him, there is a practice in Torah to confront that. And most people think it's just the practice, but you had to talk about it too. You had to come to the priest and tell him why you're bringing your wife here in the first place. And then she would then have to, there's practical practices in it. The whole point is to restore something back to its wholeness. Every single thing in Torah literally surrounds healing. The whole giving of Torah to a nation is so that they can restore their relationship when they get out of it with, it's a healing process. How do we heal when we create an infraction? Because if infractions are not just physical, they create mental sensory impressions. When somebody does something to you, if somebody, say music, most extreme case, if a person you love cheats on you, the feeling, the initial rawness of that just deceit and deception and all those things, that moment goes away. But that moment is re-triggered every time that person's phone rings, when they leave, when they don't show up, when they don't, all that stuff. The moment is past, it's years ago. But if we don't deal with the healing part, which is where that person's mind was, how that affected you, then you're constantly going to revisit that space every time something comes up. Torah has that thing literally embedded, and it then has the preventative measure of, y'all don't do this because, the process is long when this when this happens. It's a long thing. Healing is necessary, literally, for progression toward the goal. What's the goal? The work, to do that internal work. We have this evidence in something as simple as a cut finger. Yah made us, literally, we can testify to ourselves when we look at functionality. When you cut your finger, it literally immediately begins repair. Literally, like at that moment, it was whole, you cut it, it begins repair. Even the pain stops. When the pain stops, it becomes a reminder that the incident, the original sting of the incident is over, and that now the body has taken over the process. Because your finger can still be open and you're not in pain. Isn't that the craziest thing ever? Once the brain signals and that, you bleed, and then it starts sending, cells and white blood cells, and then it starts clotting and it stops bleeding. It's the craziest thing ever. The pain stops. And even though you can still look at it, when you look at it, you don't see pain because you trust that that finger is healing, because you trust the process of your body. We can take some amazing cues from our body, but the issue is that we delay the healing because we stay in the pain stage. Because we don't understand how we have to also be a part of the process and moving through. So when we get hurt, right, pain happens, but we don't go into automatic repair like our minds and our bodies do. We go into guilt, we go into shame, we go in, those are all toxic for healing. They're necessary for us to understand, right? Had we not known, then we would keep doing the same things. But we tend to sit there. And then what happens? You bleed out. You just keep bleeding, you keep bleeding, and there's not an actual healing taking place. And so then we think that now our anger and our pain are now healing, and not that really the process of healing. So we end up having to go back to, unfortunately, old wounds to be healed because we didn't have the tools to actually heal in those moments. I realized something, I'll give a personal experience. I realized something the other day that I associated, I should say, repentance with prolonged pain. That if a person didn't feel the pain long enough, or if a person could quickly apologize and quickly change their behavior in that moment, that they weren't really sorry. Because, and I'm still processing exactly why, but I realize that even when a person does something to me, if they're not profusely sorry, then I'm like, were you really? And I find myself having to prove that I'm profusely sorry to people instead of just immediately changing their behavior and a person accepting that. And I realize that I'm used to pain, but not healing. If I continue to see the blood, then I think that now there's healing. But the reality is the blood has to stop, and the thing has to heal, and the pain has to go away, and has to heal properly. And so the initial response then is shown when it comes to people and change. The initial response is shown in the acknowledgement, but the healing is shown, and it is sustained, if you will, in the not returning to that behavior, or being and seeking to understand why that behavior occurred. And so a lot of times we don't see those two things coupled with Torah. We see Yah as, I felt the pain of my sin, but we don't see Yah as the one accompanying us through understanding why, so we don't create the infraction and continue to have to feel that pain. This is important because when we have things that happen, obviously it's a reaction to stimuli and information, which we just saw. All right, let's go back to the text. The end part of this wraps up really quick. I'm kind of actually sad about that. But let's go back to, and we're going to get to this thing on metamorphosis. Let me just make sure I get my screen to go back. There we go. All right, so it says to be transformed. We're going to get to that metamorphosis by the renewing of your mind. So we kind of got to the mind part. So now let's look at the idea of transformation. I don't know if anybody else knew this, so don't think I'm like just so behind on time, because I wasn't. I mean, because I am. But does anybody know that butterflies are not the only living thing that goes through a metamorphosis process? Crazy, at least for me. That was like a very, very, very interesting reality. So actually, the number, this is New York Times, there's other places, 80% of all animal species experience metamorphosis, from frogs to flatfish to butterflies to jellyfish. And it says scientists are deeply puzzled as to how it became so common. Change is necessary, and it's all throughout the environment. It's always funny with me but on a non-scientific side, they did not believe that people, this is the word I was looking at, that people go through metamorphosis, because metamorphosis is seen as this process where something changes from one form into a complete other form. But in the text right here, in order to be transformed, even in the Greek and even in the Hebrew equivalent, it literally means to pass from one stage, or not just a stage, but literally one form of yourself into a complete different person. Completely different. But guess what? The knowledge of the caterpillar does not leave when it becomes a butterfly. Isn't that, I think, to me, that's the most amazing thing, that you don't have to give up the knowledge. You just have to be transformed and use the knowledge differently. And a lot of times we think that we have to be be born again or reincarnated to have a good life. And it's not that we didn't have or experience bad things. It's to take that knowledge and then to literally live a whole different experience with a whole new knowledge set. A whole new, it's almost, in my opinion, like starting over in life like a baby, but having all the information of how not to do the same things. And then that's why as women, it says your salvation is in child rearing. Why? Because you learned and you don't replicate and pass down those things to your children. That's noble. That's righteous. That's right. That's beautiful. It's oh my goodness. Is it not necessary? I skipped over a word, but I'm going to go back to it because we're here and we can. How I told you I was going to, because like, how did you get to the mind and the way the mind works? And I skipped over a word. I forgot that I did the very first part of this word where it says, and be not conformed. So now you can apply it retroactively. The Hebrew word here for conformed, I did all that. It applies backwards too. It's schematismo. It's where we get schemata from. Schemata is the Greek word that is directly attached to psychological and cognitive science. So that's how we ended up there. It's like, we missed a step. So literally schemata or schemas described as patterns of thought or behavior that organizes categories of information and the relationships among them. So that's how the whole circuit thing came into I got the word schemata though from the text that's called conforming. You don't keep the same schema that's been given to you. You can't conform to the schema and the mental structure and the preconceived ideas and the frameworks that represent the aspect of this world or the world you experience in your home. You cannot be conformed to that schemata. That was in the text. That's where that came from. Schemata influence attention and the absorption of new knowledge. Why you cannot be conformed. If you conform, you cannot take in new knowledge. You cannot keep an old schemata and try to do new things. So this idea of people literally are more likely to notice things that fit into their schema while reinterpreting contradictions to the schema as exceptions or distorting them to fit. That's why it's important to not conform and to have your mind renewed and transformed, because if you take old schemata into a new scenario, you're just going to apply your old mind frame to the new space. That's what a lot of people who are unhealed have done in religious spaces. So if you've ever, I use something that's kind of a far off, and it's not necessarily a negative or not, but a lot of times there's a program called Celebrate Recovery. Have you guys heard about that? You can just put a thumbs up or whatever. And it's a program that deals with people who have had past addiction. But so the people in that program tend to frame, or the people who construct it and the people who teach it are taught to frame the teaching around addiction. So you're constantly dealing with this idea that you're recovering, and you use the scriptures as with an addiction application. Like, so then like, it's not, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a very good mental practice where I'm no longer going back to this because I have, in their sense, like I have Christ, and Christ is all these things for me. So I'm focusing on that. What I've seen though, and it's not for everybody, it's not hard and fast, because it's not like the population is like this, but I've seen a lot of people who tend to, when they fall back into addiction, they don't necessarily reveal it because it now is attached to whether or not they love Yah, if they have, or love God or love Jesus, if this thing rises up again, which is very, very sad, because now with addiction of any type, it becomes chemical and becomes mental, and it necessarily doesn't always have something to do with how much you love or don't love something or somebody. And that is where you create toxic religion, because you try to treat a biological symptom without restructuring and helping the person restructuring why they even ended up in that practice in the first place. And I'm not saying they're not obviously therapeutic practices, but that's just one of them. So what you'll have is people who are afraid to go through the stages in the journey of healing, because anytime you are healing, anytime you don't lose that information. So if you're a person who has cancer, guess what? You are constantly in remission. You're constantly in a recovery from having it. People don't like to think about that because we like to say, I had it and I don't have it anymore. But any doctor will tell you if you had cancer, one, you always have the propensity to get it again. The cancer you had, that present cancer is gone, but it doesn't mean that your body may not respond and replicate cancer again in a different form. And oftentimes it's in a different place in the body. That is just the reality of that. Same thing for an athlete. When an athlete breaks a bone, the athlete is always in recovery. You're always going to think about what that leg did and how that leg in that sense failed you. And you're going to operate a little differently from that moment. It's no longer, you have an experience. The same exact thing is true with sin, right? You don't ever have to do that thing ever again. We're told to go and sin no more, but the information from that experience you still have. Now it goes into how you use that information. If you don't process the information, it remains as a framework. So if you get put in that same position, you may potentially do the same thing again. Make sense? So the scripture even teaches us that Hamashiach came for the remission of sin. Isn't that interesting? The idea that it stops that so that you can now function another way, so you can learn practices that don't trigger that thing back into full-blown death. But it means that you could. That's not what you could potentially have something start doing all the same old things after that thing that stopped it happened, and literally put yourself right back in the same position. Literally do it over again. Okay, so that's how we got there. We had to go back. I had to go back and give you guys how I got the schemata. Like, how did that come? How'd you go to the brain right away? Did you just know that inherently? No, I told you guys all the time, I'm just not that smart. It was there. And don't be conformed, right? Don't be conformed to this frame, this conceptual model, the way the brain is worked, how you were raised, to this world, to that one, and anything around you, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay, here's that second video I was talking about. We're going to watch this thing. As I said, a lot of things go through metamorphosis, including humans, because it's a spiritual process. But watch this. I just think it's cool to watch this butterfly do its thing. And then we'll move forward. How cool was that? I thought it was super cool. It's very interesting that the word metamorphosis is used. And I told you it was a Greek word, but the process and the understanding is very much a Hebraic process. The whole idea of something being Hebraic is language, but it's functional language. So something like metamorphosis immediately puts a picture in our head. Now that we watch that whole picture and a person says you have to be transformed, it's literally the idea of taking raw materials, raw experience in order to transform it into something completely new. So when you see something like that, where you're like, oh my gosh, it literally used its own self to turn into this other thing, but based upon a literal, and in my case, because obviously I believe in Torah, a supernatural prescription, the information to do that, nothing interjected and said, excuse me, it's now time for you to become a butterfly. This was all known internally, obviously from Yah put that in that caterpillar, and it's in each of us. You know when it's time, but the reality and the issue that stops it is that we experience stagnancy because we lack the faith that's required, the action, being securely fastened to actually transition into this newness. It's hard, and it's not that it's not. I don't think that Yah said, look at that, and did you see that as easy? I can't do it. You can't do it. But Yah is saying, with me, what is natural becomes supernatural. There's not a person that could have whispered to that caterpillar before it's time that it was time to become a butterfly. That was something signaled because it's connected to its source still. The natural things are still connected. And when Yah begins to speak, it's important that we know when that is, and it's important that we really do change our schema and we change the way we think, and we not conform to our past experiences, because we'll stay a caterpillar too long and we might get eaten by a bird. Like, we'll stay one too long. Yah's like, you're not food. You're for, I mean, maybe butterflies are, but you my point, like, that's not the point of your experience. The point of a caterpillar is not to stay a caterpillar. The point of the caterpillar is to become a butterfly, but it had to be a caterpillar. And I bet you that caterpillar, if they had the kind of intellect that humans have and could express it, be like, man, I appreciate the caterpillar experience, because without being a caterpillar, I wouldn't have had the fixings to become a butterfly. Or I wouldn't even, how would I have known? Would I appreciate being a butterfly if I had never been a caterpillar? And would I appreciate and know that Elohim works in me if I hadn't heard it was time to transform? If I wouldn't have never known. So in our transformation is probably the thing that we resist the most. In our transformation, I believe, is where we meet. Yeah, is where we meet God. Right? It's the one thing, it's like the death while alive. So I have to die to this version, and then the raw materials of this version is going to produce this next version of me. And so then life becomes this constant process of using the information and the old versions of me to become the new version. But if we're taught to abandon, like a bad parent in so many ways, the old version of us for the new version, then we don't have the necessary tools to become the new version. Or if you become this new version, it's false and it's superficial, and it doesn't operate in the authenticity necessary to actually draw people and actually replicate true change. Because it doesn't have that. The realest people that we all know are the people who can tell about their experience, but also show that they've transformed from it. Those are the people who are like, you are my person. Like, you went through that? And they're like, yes, I have. It's not the person who sits there like, oh my gosh, yeah, I was there, but, praise God. You're like, you're not it. You're not it. That still bothers you because you can't let both of those people live at the same time. That's not what Yah is saying. Yah is not, the whole idea is to merge the duality, not to create two fractured parts. It's to merge it. It's to use who you were to support who you become. That's the process. That's the end goal. I mean, and, somebody might disagree, but that's how I see it. So you have that too. So you're going to be transformed by the renewing. This is the part that gets cool. I told you guys it's a time frame. The renewal in, I kind of went through that kind of fast. Let me go back. All right. So renewal, let me go back. Here we go. All right. So we have the word to making new, to renew. right? That's still kind of abstract. I'm like, how long does renewal take? Is it like a license renewal, or is it like a it's like a renewal of a contract? What is this renewal? So in the Greek, this word is still a little abstract. So I traced this one back, this particular word back into its original form. And so this is a Greek form. When I traced it back and I found where is it? Here it is. So cognate words are a little different and from Greek to Hebrew, where sometimes you have compound words and Greek has like a word at the beginning that may throw you off of the definition, but that definition in Greek is required with that word, like that prefix, or whatever the other word is. So this particular word here is the cognate of the same word. If you look at them, if you look here at this word, and then here at this one, oh, I can't really highlight it too, but when I click on it, it's spelled very, very, very similar. Very similar. Like if you were to actually write it out, it's literally one letter difference. So the meaning that it shares the same root, but this is the root of that word. And the Hebrew equivalent for it is Hodesh. Hodesh. Something that calls a word of much contention, but in this case, I think we're all going to love it. We're all going to love this particular word. This particular word, and I'm going to hit it one more, means to not just renewal, but it means to renew and to repair. Still a little abstract though, still a little abstract. So I have one a little better. If you go to, and if you know what this word means right off the bat, it makes it a little bit easier. But if you scroll down here are some different ways that this word, the root word, is used. New moon, new month, new, refresh, to make anew. Sometimes people don't understand that things have names and functions. So a moon in Hebrew is yareach, right? The color of the moon is lavan, it's white. And the function of the moon is chodesh. So you know what it looks like, what it is, and how it functions. Yareach means to take a course. Chodesh tells you the course that it takes, right? So the course that it takes is approximately between 29.5 and 30 days. So when I said the word for, now you know what it means to transform. And now that you know it's a process, you have to change your schema. About how long even does science say it takes to change or to be renewed? It's about 30 days. So you could literally start from new moon to new moon, putting a practice in place and literally change the structure of how you experience something. If you knew that you only had to spend 30 days in a particular state, would that be difficult for you? But if you knew that you spent 30 years of your life in a particular state, you would look and be like, I've just been doing, I was like, I just needed 30 days of your time. Just give me 30. Just 30. That's all I'm asking for. And I can renew you and I can take you from each phase. I can take you through different things 30 days at a time. Some things may take multiple 30-day processes, but see, Yah is patient because Yah starts with small parts. Yah just be like, okay, before we're not going to work on the whole thing. Let's just work on knowing I love you. Can we do that for 30 days? And I'm going to show you for 30 days that I love you, but you're going to remember that. We're going to have sensory impressions. I'm going to tell you to go out and look at this, and I'm going to make sure you write down this. And okay, so the next day, then I'm going to show you, now when other people don't feel like this about you, I want you to then go back and look at what I told you that I felt about you. And we're going to do that for 30 days and see if that changes. And then for the next 30 days, and when you look at those small transformations, he's like, and look, I've made you Chodesh in all these different ways over and over and over again. Like it doesn't change. I felt that was me this morning. I was like, okay. All right. I get it. I absolutely get it. I get it now. I get it. I get it. I get it so much that when I see myself, and I have a thing that I'm going to work on, when I see myself in a state, my prayer is going to be, yeah, let's work on this for 30 days. So and it was interesting, is I had a thing recently and I was literally just quiet. Stuff would happen. I wouldn't react. I would just do it. And I didn't even do it. Well, I know it was like Drika would say, ruachal. I, I know it was. It wasn't a natural thing. It was Yah. I didn't realize it. And I didn't realize to today that Yah was like, look, I want you to start responding to things like this instead of like this. Not saying I can't, not blowing your top, not okay, even with my children. Instead of wanting to show them something, they get it right then and there. Say, I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to be kind and gentle and patient on this one thing for 30 days, and then see if you're frustrated with them. Not when you showed it to them that one time, and then they didn't respond, or you showed it to them 5 times in 1 hour or 20 times in 1 day. It's like, no, how about a little bit at a time for 30 days? Just a little bit. No system overload. No frustration. You're not expecting them to get it right away because you know we're only at day 5. And it's something about that time cushion that makes you just like pause for a second. For me at least, it makes me pause my frustration. I'm frustrated, but you've only been working on this for 2 days. You can't be frustrated. And in 30 days, we know the science behind in 30 days, I will be better at, I'll see growth. And so then I'll want to keep doing it, but it takes that time. And there's something about that time, that space and time that immediately activates patience, and not the patience of like we struggle with, but like, okay, I have time. It's that feeling of feeling rushed to do everything. I think that complicates all the processes that we have to do. Like, I feel like I'm working out. It's been 1 week. I should see results. No, see how you look in 30 days. 30 days from now, stay consistent. And then 30 days from now, come back. And 30 days with a little bit. Because I'll find myself, I'm going to do 2 a days. No. Where can you start right now? 15 minutes for 30 days will yield way more than 4 hours once a week. It's just the reality. It's just the reality of it. I know it's something that we know, and that's why we're all laughing, because it seems like, goodness, this is just so simple. But sometimes when it comes from Abba, it comes to the word, it just hits a little different. It just hits a little different. So literally, the text says, literally, to be renewed. And then he gives a time frame, because Yah is not cruel. Yah knows humans. He knows our nature. He knows how we are. He's like, can I just get 30? Can I get 30? And he says this, and if you give me that 30, the 30 comes with a promise. That's the part that it's not just give me 30. I'm going to renew your mind. I'm going to renew your authority within, because that's what helps us to be consistent. Our authority within is weak. I literally have begun, it's been about a year now, where every morning I pray and I'm like, yeah, it's just you and me. Like, I need you for whatever this tiny task is. I need you to get up. I need you to, whatever it is, I just make sure I put that on the table. I am your needy human daughter who needs you for every single thing today. And I'm okay with you interjecting, correcting, setting my, whatever it is, even when I feel guilty or whatever it is. Yeah, if you give me that, I know it's from you. I'm not going to take it as a negative. I'm going to rejoice over it, and I'm going to be quick to change. And it has made a difference. I have not, no, this is a big thing. I have not had like sinking depression in over a year because of that. And I think not that things have not hide and load on me, but that feeling of just like hopelessness. Because I'm like, I can't help it me. I feel me all the time. Y'all, look here. I'm like Rabbi Shaul, he's like, the things I don't want to do, I do. But if I just go back to Yah and say, okay, yeah, here I am again. This is what and now I can articulate it. Now my prayer has changed. When this happened, I needed to do, and this is how this happened. If I miss anything, yeah, please reveal it to me when this situation comes up again. And now I've gone from just this like, oh, woe is me, to now I'm bringing it to Yah. I'm not afraid of it. Now he's like, now I'm casting my cares on him. I'm bringing it, and I'm coming now with a solution where I think I'm like, I could have did this differently. Da, da, da. Can you soften the person's heart so that I return and I do this and it doesn't disrupt all the work we've done to get here? Because this one moment seems like it set us back. And I was like, it's not a setback, because the way you're going to return is going to be a part of the repair process too. Also, in the 30-day process, it doesn't mean that you don't have to, like, things that don't go wrong. Like, you don't have to keep going, okay, I got to start my 30 days over. I got to start my, because we do that, right? That's not it either. The moon, because you didn't see it, doesn't go, all right, back to new moon. The moon keeps changing, even if you don't, even if the clouds cover it. Why? Because I'm going to keep doing what I'm supposed to do. And eventually, guess what? You'll see me. You'll see me. Somebody sees me, right? Somebody will let you know. All right. So the renewing of the mind comes the promise. What? That ye may prove. This one's a big one. So this word means to test and examine. This, I want to say we did this word before, but I'm not sure. And I'm going to move a little bit faster. It literally means to try something. Let me see if I can pull this word up. To try something to prove it's, it is the word I thought it was. To try something. So bachen, here's the word right here. And it means to test performance for quality. So at the end of the 30 days, you're going to be able to prove some things. You're going to be able to test your performance for quality. Like I told you, if you do something for 15 minutes every day, your performance is going to get better, whether it's handwriting, whether it's push-ups. You're going to, in practice, be able to test it to see if the process worked. Even if you don't do it perfect. That's why at the beginning I said, Yad is not asking for perfection. He's asking for you to yield to being perfected, to be on the perfecting process. Why? Because if you keep yielding to being perfected, you will see results. If you never do it, you'll never see anything, or you'll be disappointed because you'll look back and say, it's been 2 years. If I would have started this 2 years ago, this is where I would have been. Like, don't we do that? I do that. So the idea of proving means to test performance for quality. This also worked with other people. As your mind changes, as your circuit system changes, as the schema changes, guess what? You're going to be able to examine and test and prove people. You're going to be able to examine and test and prove things and trust that your proving is correct. Because a lot of times we be like, I would have just went with my first mind. I wouldn't have, but you didn't trust yourself. You hadn't been put in a position to trust yourself. That's the first one. So yeah, I was like, you'll be able to examine, test, and approve things. You'll be a good judge of things. Like, I like that. I like that. Yeah. I want to be a good judge of things. The next one, it says, and not just prove anything, but what is good. What is good. You'll be able to prove what is functional. Because I know, well, we can prove the BS. You on that other. We know that good. So yeah, I was like, how can I take that? So you don't have to always be on the defense, and show you how to now prove the good, so you can then be around more people who are good instead of being comfortable being around people. I'm around them because I know what to expect. I got some people like that. Right? It's just, it is, I was like, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to be afraid of getting around new people thinking they're going to treat you an old way, because you're going to learn how to prove what is good. The next one says what's good. And then the other word is what is acceptable. This particular word here was, let me find it. Here it is. It's the word aresko, and it literally means that which is, and I use this one, which was yashar, but it also has the word ayin. It literally means to literally what is pleasing to the eyes, what can be seen and observed. So guess what happens? When the mind changes, your vision changes too. Anybody who's ever experienced any form of depression, whether it was through grief or whatever, or just stress, just in general, it doesn't have to be depression, because some people don't like to label things. Your spectrum of sight seems like it's right here. Have you ever like came out of like being really, really stressed, or you like, whatever you did to stress relief, you stepped outside, you're like, there's a sky outside and those trees are really green. Like everything just seems to like, seem so much more vibrant, and the world just seems bigger. Like I know when I'm rushing or I'm stressed in the morning, because I'll be driving and all I can see is the road in front of me. And when I stop and pause, I'm like, wow, the mountains have snow on them. And the sky and Yah's like, it's always like that. If you just stay with me in the moment, it's always like that. So this idea of what's pleasing is to be able to see something in the full picture of what it is. The other word that I chose out of here that I thought was very interesting was the word yashar. And let me pull that one up. That word means to straighten. So what is pleasing is also what is straight, what is right. It ain't on a curve. It ain't slanted. It's not, we'll accept like marred things and call them okay. And Yah was like, no, you'll be able to actually be able to see in a straight line, and you'll be able to see what is right, and you'll know, and you'll be able to declare it, and you'll be able to apply things equitably too, because straight is not always just one thing. It's knowing how to connect two things together, right? Straight is from like one point to another to get to the end result. So you'll be able to know these things by your mind being transformed. And then, and you'll know that they're acceptable. And then this one right here, this one threw me. Last one, what is perfect? What is perfect? So you'll know what is good, what is acceptable. So you'll know what's good. You'll know what acceptable to Yah. You'll be able to see it. You'll see like he sees. And then what is perfect. So the Greek gives you perfect, mature, complete, perfect, entire, without spot, blemish. But this word is not so much what we would think, because our first mind would say, oh, this means what is shalom, what is peace. At the end, you'll have peace. You'll know the peace will of Yah. Well, I'm going to burst your bubble, and that's not it. The word here is bain, and it's a Hebrew word with the root of banah, but it means to understand. This is what we all want, and this is why this is something to strive for. You will be able to literally penetrate to the core of things. And literally, so now it's like you had vision, then you had X-ray vision. You'll be able to have insight. When your mind is renewed, then you can have insight to things, not just sight, but insight. You'll have understanding and knowledge through thorough reasoning, because now you won't be reasoning through broken schema. You'll be able to reveal and make things known, and you will understand the interaction of elements. And this is why I believe that an emotional intelligence for a called out people is super, super important. And it's one of the most neglected parts. Mental health and emotional intelligence is very, very necessary, because the issue we have is without the mind being transformed, how can people have a transformative teaching? So then guess what? It's a teaching that reinforces a broken schema. But with a transformed mind, now you have a mature teaching, one that has insight, understands, is thorough, reasons, reveals. And that's how we have to be able to handle the law, if the law is put in place to heal and repair, and if we've been called to the ministry of reconciliation. Just through this, you'll be able to see a person be like, your mind is not renewed. You have gifting, but your mind is not renewed. You know words, you have a function, you may be called, but your mind is not renewed. And we'll be able to hold people accountable to mental renewal instead of just more knowledge. Can you apply what you're learning? Because that is what's going to yield more. But because we can't always change leadership, my goal is to change the people. If the minds of the people change, then they'll pick different leadership. And then guess what? Just like with anything else, when people start doing something different, people get in line. They're like, nobody's listening anymore. And yeah, like, yup. That's the same thing that happened. It's what happened to Saul. Go back to Saul. Remember, they were like all gung-ho about it. And he was like, kill my son. And they were like, yeah, no. And that's where you lost us. You took it too far. We have to get to a place where they're like, look, we respect you and all, bro, and you the king, but that's when you took it a little too far. But people don't get to that place until their minds are renewed. So instead of trying to change the top, right, the head, Let's start changing the cells in the body, right? A body is made up of individual communities. If the individual communities within the body start changing, the head will change. So that's why we change like our diet and the things. Same thing works in a body of people. All right, so that's what we're going to end with. That's the last part. Let me give you the body part. Yeah, I did that. That wasn't me. So the body part says this: for I say, though through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as Elohim hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we being many are one body in Hamashiach, and every one members one of another, having the gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the portion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teacheth on teaching, or he that exhorteth on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth with diligence, and he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. Let love be without dissimulation, abhor that which is evil, and cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affection one to another with brotherly and sisterly love, and honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving Yah, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you, and bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay it, saith Yah. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.